Welcome to Family Drama Stories from Reddit. Real family drama told from the heart. Let's begin. My name is Mary, and here is the story of how I discovered I had never fully belonged in my own family. I went to my sister Ellie's wedding with the simple purpose of celebrating, smiling, for a few photos, and playing the role of the kind older sister that I had always been. The wedding took place at a lakeside resort in Vermont, noted for its flower-filled gardens and opulent banquet halls with soaring glass ceilings. As soon as my car arrived at the front gate, a staff worker in a black suit stepped out to open the door. I took a deep breath, smoothed the wine-coloured dress that I thought best fit the posh event, and smiled as I stepped in. I didn't want to grab attention or make the day about me. This was Ellie's day, and I had long understood that I was not the favourite child, but I didn't anticipate them to be that frigid. As soon as I entered the main hall, a receptionist greeted me with a bright smile. "Your name, Mary Evans?" I spoke quietly. Her smile faltered briefly. I noticed the hesitancy on her flawlessly made-up face. Her hand flipped through the list a little faster than normal, before coming to a stop. Her eyes narrowed briefly before she looked up. Here it is? You are placed in the hallway, I blinked. Sorry, but where? She said casually, just outside the banquet hall near the coat check area. I glanced at the seating chart next to us. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Evans, were sitting at the head table. Ellie's close friends and her husband's co-workers all had seats inside beneath the shimmering chandeliers. And me, I did not see my name anywhere. Maybe there was a mistake, I responded, trying to keep my emotions under control. She smiled again, but more awkwardly. I am afraid not. This is the designated location. My chest burned. I convinced myself that the hall might have ran out of space. Perhaps it was a last-minute error. But then I noticed my mother standing next to Ellie, fixing the veil on her wedding dress. They laughed and clung to each other as if nothing was wrong. I stepped over and spoke steadily. "Mum, can I speak with you for a second?" My mother. Caroline did not even look at me. "Not now. Mary, can't you see that we're busy?" I bit my lip. "Just 1 minute." She muttered, evidently angry, and stepped aside. Ellie remained motionless, her gaze fixed on me with a smile that could scarcely be called warm. "I have been seated," I responded. In the hallway, my mother shrugged as if it wasn't worth addressing. "You are aware that we have to prioritise our immediate family." I clenched my fist. "I am close to my family." She gave a quiet, icy laugh. "Don't make a big deal out of it," Mary Ellie spoke out, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "I am sure that was merely a mix-up. Nobody intended anything by it. Weddings are chaotic." Her voice was sugary sweet, but her appearance was anything but. I looked at my mother again, hoping for a glimmer of hesitancy, but she simply sighed. "Do not ruin your sister's special day." "Mary, you should be grateful that you were invited." The word appreciative stayed in my throat like a stone. Grateful to be viewed as an outsider in my own family. "Are you grateful to be sitting close to the coat rack?" Before I could reply, my father Charles. He walked up with a hushed voice as if he only wanted the time to pass. "It's only a seat, honey. Do not make it a thing." I stood still. The fury was simmering calm, not explosive but something deeper and colder. I gave an empty smile and turned away, not saying anything else. They expected me to accept it silently as usual, but I refused. I moved slowly out of the main hall, my shoes gently clicking against the cold marble floor. The corridor smelled like silk wedding flowers and something else. Something out of place, just like me. I held the place card with my name, Mary Evans, Table H, hallway area. The exquisite cursive seemed like a smack to the face. I flipped the card in my fingers, my palm wet. I had hoped just once that my family would recognise me as one of them, but evidently they never did. A quiet click sounded from behind. The door to the hall opened. Mary. Elia's voice called, so light, like a greeting, yet strong enough to stop me. I turned. She stood there, arms crossed, her veil flapping in the cool air, her makeup immaculate and her grin everything but kind. "Are you upset?" she inquired, showing no actual worry. Because of the sitting, I gave a dry laugh. "I am not upset. I am disappointed." Ellie tilted her head, her eyes brightening, as if she'd just heard something amusing. You're always quite sensitive. It's only a seat. Mary, who cares? I chewed the inside of my cheek and held my voice calm. You understand, it's not about the seat. It matters how this family treats me. It has always been like, way. She shrugged. So what? You still showed up. I still wore the gorgeous dress. Still hoping for attention. She took a step closer, her voice dropping so that only I could hear. You desperately want their approval. It's sad. I stared her directly in the eyes. No, Ellie. What's unfortunate is that you have to put someone down in order to feel appreciated. Ellie paused for a moment, then chuckled as if it didn't matter. As usual, you have a knack for killing the mood. Footsteps approached from behind her. It was Mum. Caroline's attitude was tense, as if she had been dragged away from the celebration for something unimportant. I heard there's some drama out here, she questioned, her gaze fixed on Ellie and scarcely glanced at me. I took a deep breath and told myself that I deserved an explanation, Mum. I was sitting in the hallway. I'm not an acquaintance or a distant guest. I am your daughter. She scrunched her forehead, then smiled tightly. Mary, it's not that I don't appreciate you. It's only there were a restricted number of seats inside. I had to prioritise those who were nearby. I stood still. What have you just said? She spoke hastily as she got closer to Ellie. Aunt Patty, her best friend from college, and the individuals that were present when she was ill. You've always been independent. I've never had to worry about you. I let out a faint laugh that astonished even me. You've never had to worry for me, and you think that justifies treating me as if I don't exist. Ellie came in with a sugary voice. Mary, stop it. Mum did not intend it like that. You are overreacting. You should be glad that you were ever invited. That sentence cut deep. I turned to look at Mum as if it was the first time I'd seen her. Do you realise how grateful you sound after making me feel like a stranger in my own family? She said nothing. No, touch, hug, or apologies. A strong voice sounded from my left. It's only a seat, Mary. It was my dad, Gregory. He stood there with a glass in his hand, staring at the floor. Still the same avoidance as usual. I turned to him and spoke carefully. I don't need you to defend me, but please, look me in the eye when you speak. He looked up, his uncertainty fleeting before vanishing. Ellie shrugged as if I were a stubborn child spoiling the adults' fun. If you are so upset, you can simply leave? I glanced at the three of them, these individuals I'd once considered family. I suddenly understood that maybe Ellie was right. I gripped my handbag tightly and took a deep breath. Something inside of me snapped, not from weakness, but from insight. If they determined I didn't belong, I wouldn't try again. And what was about to happen would ensure they never forgot this evening. I moved rapidly along the thick, carpeted hall, my heels swallowed by the soft silence. Behind me, the music in the banquet hall played pleasantly with laughter and clinking glasses filling the room. But everything sounded like it was from another universe. A world I was never truly welcomed into. I paused in a quiet nook, clutching my bag strap as if it were the only thing keeping me grounded. Ellie's smile, Mom's dismissive toss of the head, and Father's distant quiet. Everything whirled in my mind like a broken tune, and then a recollection returned, crisp and distinct as if it had occurred yesterday. 3 years ago, I returned home for Thanksgiving, the only time Ellie was not present, because she was travelling in Portugal with a new lover. The house in Albany seemed curiously tranquil. There was no loud talk, nor was there any residual scent of Ellie's strong perfume. Mum instructed me to go to my old room and gather some family photos for a remembrance album. I nodded, happy to be doing something useful, or at least included. My room had remained unchanged after all these years. The modest bed by the window, the ancient bookshelf, and the primarily self-portrait high school images. I rummaged through the drawer to find the photo box, but my gaze was drawn to the small drawer of my mother's vanity. I wasn't sure why, but I opened it. Inside, there was a light brown leather notebook. Every page was filled with my mother's handwriting as she rested calmly, crowned with careful letters. I flicked it open without thinking anything until I read the first few sentences. Ellie did not cry on her first day of kindergarten. She turned around, waved farewell to me, and dashed into class like a brave little doll, too. I turned the pages. Ellie, like the baked pasta I cook on Thursday nights. Ellie used to be afraid of thunder, but now she is a lot braver. Ellie's favourite birthday gift was the little nursing outfit I gave her when she turned 8, page after page, year after year. It was Ellie. Always Ellie memories were documented as a private memoir. Exclusively for her, I began seeking, as if to prove to myself that I too had once been remembered. I flipped through each page, scanning every line, but there was nothing. Not a sentence. Not a line. Not even the name Mary. I grabbed the notebook so hard that my knuckles turned white. When Mum walked in, I was still sitting immobile on the floor with the notepad open in my hands. "Did you write all of this about Ellie?" I inquired, my voice small yet frigid. She glanced at the journal and smiled lightly as if it meant nothing. I needed to remember everything, so Ellie would not feel forgotten. She is sensitive. I chewed my lip until it bled. So what about me? Mum looked at me with steadfast eyes. You've always been independent. You did not have to be written about to be remembered. I nodded and said nothing more, but something within me cracked in that instant, part of my childhood, part of my optimism. And a part of me wished for my mother's recognition. That memory came back so vividly in the opulent corridor of today's wedding. Nothing had changed. I was still Mary. My mother never thought to include her daughter in her memory book, and she did not think she required a good seat at her sister's wedding. A shiver rushed down my spine, not from the air conditioning, but from the clarity. I slid onto the bench beside the window, directly next to the coat rack, exactly where they had intended for me to be. I stared at the name card in my hand, which was printed in gold writing, and then at my weak reflection in the glass. Behind me, the wedding was going on. Glistening lights, white flowers, Ellie's stunning smile and her pricey gown. But I sat here at the intersection of memory space and affection. If this was where they believed I belonged, they may not have known me at all. And for the first time, I was not sad about it. I just felt like I was finally coming out of the shadows they had placed over me for so long. And I was prepared to face it all. I remained motionless on the bench by the glass, my heart torn between memories and the present, everything that had just happened, the way Ellie insulted me, the way Mum dismissed my sentiments as if they didn't matter, replayed in my thoughts like a never-ending loop. "Mary," I was startled by a low male voice. I looked up. Standing in front of me was Ethan Bennett, the groom of the day. He wore a fitted tux, his tie slightly loosened, and his dark brown hair tousled as if he had rubbed his hands through it under stress. He was holding an untouched champagne flute. I stood up, adjusted my outfit, and gave a little nod. "Ethan?" He glanced at me with narrowed eyes, as if he was trying to figure out something. "Seeing you sitting here does not feel like you." I gave out a quiet laugh. "Really? Because your family determined I wasn't worthy of a seat in the main hall." He said nothing. A deep hush fell between two people who hardly knew each other yet, were having an unusually intimate time. "Mary," Ethan finally said, his voice low, "may I ask you something?" I met his gaze. "Go ahead." He paused, his hand tightening slightly on the stem of the glass. "Has Ellie ever mentioned anything about me that appeared strange to you?" I tilted my head. "Are you asking if I've heard her slander you?" "Not only that." He removed his phone from his inner jacket pocket, looked down at the screen and shook his head. "It's just that lately she's been different, domineering and secretive. There are things she doesn't want me to know, and I'm beginning to understand." "Something is not right," I halted. Ellie's harsh words at family gatherings lingered in my thoughts, but I had never told anyone, partly because I didn't want to make trouble and partly because I was so used to being ignored. But something in Ethan's eyes prevented me from remaining mute this time. "You might want to brace yourself," I added gently, "since I don't believe you know who Ellie is." He opened his mouth to respond, but another voice interrupted, gentle but strangely powerful. "If you're still unsure, ask your mother for clarification." We both turned. Celeste Bennett. Ethan's mother waited at the end of the corridor, clutching a phone with her gaze fixed on her son. She was the type of woman that caused a stop in a room when she entered. Not because she was loud, but because her mere presence drew attention. Today, she wore a beautiful blue gown, her platinum hair in a sleek bun, and her eyes were piercing enough to see through anything. She stepped closer and handed Ethan the phone. "Look." Ethan snatched it, swiping over the screen. First a wrinkled brow, then a surprised expression. I noticed his fingers tremble slightly as he scrolled. I couldn't read the signals, but his expression shifted, from confusion to rage, and finally to something more. Broken, Ethan's voice crackled. She told her closest friend that she was teaching me to be the perfect spouse, that I was too predictable, and that if she remained charming in front of you, this house would be hers. Celeste nodded. There are also messages for her stylist. Ellie promised that a few months after the wedding she would find a method to make you reliant, and then, everything will be mine. That is a direct quote. I looked at Ethan. His face had become pallid, his shoulders tensed. He seemed to be bracing against an invisible weight. He murmured, "I can't believe this." "Mum, why do you have these messages?" Celeste looked at me, then responded. "A buddy of mine works at the studio from which Ellie recruited her stylist. When I rescheduled a fitting, they unintentionally forwarded the backup file to my email. Read it." Ethan dropped into a chair, still holding the phone. The air around us seemed frozen. I sat alongside him and said nothing. Part of me felt sorry for him, but another part recognised that this was the moment when long-buried secrets were finally revealed. Celeste stayed there silently for a few seconds, before gently saying, "Mary, thank you for not turning away." I gave a slight nod. I didn't require thanks. All I wanted was for the truth to come out, and from here on out I knew the wedding would not happen as planned. Ellie would no longer be able to control everything as she had previously believed. The air in the private conference room on the resort's second level was heavy. No one spoke as the door closed behind us. Only the hum of the air conditioner and a tiny breeze slipped through a slightly open window. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his gaze flat. Celeste stood behind him, her palm resting lightly on his shoulder like the one remaining anchor. I sat slightly to the right, hands in my lap, attempting to remain calm despite the fact that my heart was pounding so loudly that I was certain everyone could hear. The door opened again. Ellie strolled in with my mother, Caroline. Mum seemed perplexed, but Ellie didn't. She maintained her customary air of confidence, but there was a hint of caution in her gaze. And worry. "What's happening here?" Ellie inquired, her voice slightly high-pitched as if she were attempting to regain control. "Why are you all withdrawing folks from the wedding?" Ethan stood up, and his expression was no longer shocked. It was a chilly, unwavering resolve. He took a white envelope from the pocket of his suit jacket and firmly placed it on the table. "Do you know what this is?" Ellie stared at the envelope and said nothing. "Petition to annul the marriage," he added, his voice steady. "And just so you know, I've already signed it." The room went silent. My mother gasped and covered her mouth with her palm. Ellie took a step back, her lips tightly squeezed together. "You are joking, correct?" she inquired, attempting to keep her voice quiet. Celeste shouted up, her voice as keen as a dagger. "We have read all of your messages, Ellie. Everything you said about Ethan, me, and our family. There is no denying it. I did." "Don't!" Ethan cut her off, and for the first time his voice was full of hurt and fury. "You described my mother as a wealthy elderly woman who only knows how to write checks. You promised your friend you'd have everything under control 6 months after the wedding. You said I was too easy to control. Just act to be vulnerable and you'll get whatever you want." "Do you want me to quote more?" Ellie froze. I looked at my mother. She stood motionless, her face pallid, as if she were witnessing her daughter's actual self for the first time. "Those were jokes," Ellie explained, her voice scratchy, messages between friends. "Not serious," Celeste offered a short, bitter laugh. "And how about the divorce consultation you filed last month? Was that a joke too?" That was when I noticed my father Robert enter the room, his look grim. I wasn't sure who had summoned him, but His presence appeared to deepen the room's uncomfortable quiet. "Is that true?" he questioned, gazing directly at Ellie. Ellie did not respond. Robert turned to face my mother. "Did you know about it?" Mum shook her head weakly. I didn't think Ellie could do this." "You never think," he explained gently. "You've never investigated what's really going on." Then he turned to me, and for the first time in many years he did not escape my gaze. "Mary," he mentioned. "I apologise." Both my mother and I were startled. I had never heard him apologise, especially not to me. "I've been quiet for too long. Let everything wander off course," he continued. "And I know you were correct about Ellie, about everything." I wasn't sure how to react. Part of me had gotten accustomed to being unnoticed, and this recognition took my breath away. Ellie snapped out of it. "Are you on her side?" she shouted, her voice rising. "Your daughter, whom you've always adored, is being turned on by her entire family over a few silly texts." Ethan clutched the table's edge. "Ellie, don't call them dumb texts. That is who you truly are. You do not comprehend." Ellie shouted, her voice shaking. "I love you. I really didn't want to pass up the opportunity to construct a secure life." "What is wrong with that?" Celeste lifted her eyebrow. "Is this what love looks like? Planning a divorce before the wedding even begins?" Ellie swung toward me, her eyes flaming. She was lying. "This is entirely your responsibility. If you hadn't been so envious and hadn't poisoned Mum against me today, wouldn't have been so bad." I took a deep breath and remained calm. "Ellie, you did it to yourself. Don't blame anyone else. You've always been the outsider in this family," Ellie shouted constantly, appearing to be the good one in order to make Mum feel guilty. "What do you want, to steal everything from me?" "No," I replied, my voice quiet but distinct. "I just want the truth to be revealed." My mother then stepped forward. She stared at Ellie for a long time, puzzled and hurt, before finally, "Broken Ellie," she spoke softly. "I can't defend you anymore." Ellie stood frozen. Her lips trembled, as if she wanted to say something, but no words could help right now. She turned to face me, and for the first time in my life, I recognized dread in her, not afraid of being caught. Fear arose as she realized no one was standing by her this time. Ellie stood there in the absolute silence, breathing hard, her hands locked into fists by her sides. The perfectly placed makeup from the morning had smudged around her eyes. The beautiful white wedding gown that had astonished everyone just hours before now appeared tight, cumbersome, and devoid of the elegance she had envisioned for her special day. She whipped her head towards me, her eyes darkening. "You've always wanted to bring me down," Ellie snarled, her voice cracking. "You never let me have a tranquil moment, did you?" I didn't respond. There was nothing more to say, but Ellie didn't require a response. She raced at me, her eyes blazing and her footsteps resounding over the slick tile floor. I did not move. I was not afraid. At that exact moment, a firm arm moved between us. It was Celeste. "That's enough," she stated. Her voice was quiet, yet it was as sharp as steel. Ellie froze, astonished. "Move out of my way," Celeste said forcefully. "You've caused enough chaos. If I allow you to do another foolish act, it will be on me." Ellie panted, her eyes darting about the room, as if hunting for an exit. Or perhaps someone is still on her side. But no one spoke, no one came forward. Ethan leaned on the table, his countenance unreadable. My father had his head bent and his forehead wrinkled as if he had just accepted a harsh reality. My mother, who had earlier pardoned every little mistake Ellie made, stood still, gripping her handbag strap, eyes rimmed with scarlet. Ellie then pushed past Celeste, her heels clattering on the floor as she raced out of the room, her long train trailing after her down the corridor. I expected her to vanish behind the door, but no. She pushed open the large doors leading back to the reception hall, where soft music was still playing and hundreds of guests were smiling, clinking glasses and posing for photos against a backdrop of perfectly white flowers. Ellie appeared with breathless breath, untidy hair and frantic eyes. Everything ceased. The music faded. Heads turned. A murmur arose, curious, astonished, and then shocked. Stares. The rest of us in the conference room followed behind her. Nobody tried to stop her. Nobody wanted to. Ellie stood in the centre of the reception hall. What was supposed to be the most beautiful moment of her life has now become the setting for the demise of a self-proclaimed queen. "Do you think you can humiliate me like this?" Ellie yelled, her voice echoing across the rows of banquet tables and gleaming chandeliers. "I gave everything I had today, months of planning, selecting every last detail. And now, after a few messages, a few meaningless words, are you going to destroy me?" No one responded. Ethan stepped forward, his stare unwavering. "Nobody ruined you, Ellie. You accomplished it yourself." She shook her head furiously, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You love me, Ethan. I did everything for our future." Celeste stepped forward slowly yet deliberately. She confronted Ellie, her voice chillingly calm. "I had thought you'd be a part of this family, but you didn't want to be a Bennett. You just wanted what we had." A quiet "oh" swept through the gathering like a wave. People were starting to comprehend. Some people exchanged glances, and a few placed their glasses down their eyes, heavy with awareness. Ellie looked around her breath, unsteady. "She made all of this up," she exclaimed, pointing directly at me. "Mary has always been jealous of me, attempting to bring me down. She has spent her entire existence in the background, and now she wants to bring me down with her." I stepped forward, calm and steady, my voice just audible. "I do not need to bring anyone down. The truth bears its own weight." Ellie fell silent. The tension was as taut as wire. All eyes were on her. Even those who had formerly encouraged and adored her now stood silently. She glanced to Ethan, clinging to a last ray of hope. "You cannot leave me. I am your wife. We made vows." Ethan reached into his jacket pocket for the same white envelope he had brought with him. He held it up in front of Ellie. "This is the annulment contract," he remarked softly, his voice calm and chilly. I signed it. The entire room appeared to hold its breath. Celeste tenderly placed her hand on her son's shoulder. "Let's go, Ethan." As they turned to walk away, Ellie was alone, surrounded by chandeliers and glittering gowns. She had formerly been the centre, the star relying on control and looks. Everything had crumbled right in front of everyone. A week after Ellie's wedding, I awoke in my tiny Boston apartment. There are no bridal flowers, distant violin music judging eyes, or whispered side comments. It's just me and stillness. My phone vibrated lightly on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen. "Mum, this is the 9th call in 3 days. I did not respond. I'd heard enough in that conference room, that reception hall, and over a lifetime of quiet endurance. I didn't need a half-hearted apology or a staged hug. I didn't need them to continue behaving like a picture-perfect family, merely to save face. That afternoon, as I was brewing coffee, a text arrived. From Mum. "I know you're in. Sometimes the hardest truth is realizing that the people we long to be closest to our own family were never willing to see us for who we truly are." Mary's story is a powerful reminder that silence does not equal acceptance, and loyalty should never require invisibility. For years, she tried to earn love by being quiet, supportive, and selfless, only to be sidelined at the most symbolic moment of family unity, her sister's wedding. But what began as a painful exclusion led to the collapse of a false narrative, exposing years of favoritism, manipulation, and emotional neglect. The lesson: value cannot be granted, it must be recognized. And when it's not walking away is not weakness, it's courage. Being the strong one in the family often means carrying the weight of dysfunction in silence. But eventually, strength also means knowing when to stop. You are allowed to choose peace over proximity, healing over history, and dignity over duty. Just because someone shares your blood doesn't mean they deserve your soul. Mary didn't cause the collapse. She simply stopped holding it up. and in doing so, she finally stepped out of the shadows and into her own light.